Welcome. Let's begin by taking a comfortable seat. Journaling, of course, but let's set the journal aside to begin. So make sure your journal's out of the way. You've given yourself some room. Let's begin by closing the eyes. Or just taking the gaze down a few feet ahead of you, softening the eyes. And starting with the sounds around you. The sounds outside of your space, off in the distance. Bringing the attention to sounds that might be inside your room. And maybe bringing your attention to the sound of your own body breathing. And let's begin to shift the attention from the external experience of that breathing, the sounds of the breath, to the experience of breathing from the inside. And where do you feel your breath most keenly right now? Noticing if that's the sensation of the air moving in and out of the nose, its temperature, its pressure, or if it's the movement in the belly or the chest. Just noticing where your breath is most obvious. And watching that breath, bring your attention gently to your inhale. Noticing a few rounds of breath just with the attention on the inhale. Noticing if it feels shallow, if it feels deep. If it feels long, if it feels short. If it feels free or a little bit controlled. And then shifting the attention now to the second half of the breath, the exhales. Noticing the qualities of your exhale right now. Does it feel restrained or free? Does it feel complete or partial? Noticing if it feels shorter, longer, or about the same as your inhales. And now let's intentionally bring a bit of parity, evenness to the breath. So at the bottom of your next exhale, just count, noticing how long it takes you to breathe in. And counting, noticing how long it takes you to breathe out. And if those numbers are not the same, it's okay. Take another round. Notice if it's the same or different. Counting in and counting out. And now, ever so gently, half a breath at a time, see if you can begin to bring those halves of your breath into alignment. Maybe adding a count to the inhale or adding a count to the exhale. And if the breath is already even, maybe deepening it by adding a count to both sides. And letting that go, letting go of the counts, letting go of the focus on either side of the breath. And we'll get ready to come back into the space now together. So start just by rubbing your hands together, eyes closed if they've been closed. Just getting a little movement. And when you're ready, you can flutter the eyes open, but keep your gaze down. And just go ahead and find your journal, bringing it close now. And the first thing I'm going to invite you to write is a free write. And the question is, in what ways is this moment in your life a series of transitions? How are you transitioning right now? Just let everything flow out of you. No worries about grammar. You can even sketch, doodle if you'd prefer. Just writing about the different kinds of transitions that are happening for you right now. Thinking of as many examples as you can. And thinking if there are any other ways that this feels like a transitional period for you. And now, continuing to write down as many of the ways that this is a transition for you, I invite you to make a bit of a division in your journal now. Either making a list or perhaps a Venn diagram. And in the first column or in the first circle, I invite you to write down all of the things that are transitioning out of your life right now. What are the parts of your life or projects that are coming to a close? In the second column or the second circle, you may consider the projects that are beginning, things that are starting. And maybe if you're having a sense of coming to fruition, thinking about whether that feels like the tail end of what has already happened, the start of something new, or maybe it resides in that middle place. So perhaps there's a third column that feels like the in-between space, truly the transition, the liminal space. If it's your Venn diagram, maybe there are things that belong in that space too. So using the next couple of minutes now to reread what you've already written and migrate them into these columns. Any other things that arise, feel free to add them to those lists or add them to those circles accordingly. So again, what's leaving, what's arriving, and what's somewhere in between? I'm taking about another minute and a half or so to really parse these things out, adding as many things as you can think of. And finishing up whatever words or phrases you're on, images that you're sketching, And setting the journal aside now. And let's settle back into the breath. So let's take a moment to return, eyes closed or the gaze down. Finding your breath again, just dropping right back in where you left off. Noticing where your breath feels most obvious right now. And noticing anything that feels different. Are there places of tightness, holding? Were there any emotional aspects to what you just did that have residual effects in the body? I recently heard it said that emotions are where thoughts meet the body. Can you notice any places in the body that stand out against the backdrop of your breath? And when you're ready, just shifting the attention again to the inhales and the exhales. And let's bring some evenness to the breath again, gently noting how many beats it takes to count in, how many beats it takes to count out. Maybe nudging the breath towards evenness. Gently. No rush. One half breath at a time. And now, as you continue to breathe, can you adjust your focus to find the moment when the inhale begins? Continuing to breathe, noticing each round of breath. Can you find the beginning of the inhale? And as you watch that inhale grow, where does it seem to crest? Where's the height of the inhale? Still keeping the breath even, but just noticing these points on the inhale. Where does it start? Where does it rise to? And can you pinpoint exactly when the inhale stops? When you're no longer inhaling? And keeping the breath even just to make sure you don't get overly oxygenated, but focusing on these parts of the breath. Within the evenness of your breath, you can identify these milestones in each breath. And gently beginning to release that focus, feeling the fullness of your breath, evenness of the breath. In and out. Following just another couple of rounds of breath, even breath in and out. And bringing your attention back to the larger aspects of your body. Maybe start by rubbing your hands on your legs if that's where they are, or rubbing your hands together again. And when you're ready, again with the gaze down, fluttering the eyes open and finding your journal again. As we get ready to move into our second prompt. And so the second question is, what about these aspects that are on the way in? Now that you have separated what is on its way out from what it's on its way in, take a look at that side of your list, that side of your Venn diagram, and take the next couple of minutes just to free write everything that comes to mind about these particular things, the things that are transitioning into your life right now. Of course, again, no need to edit as you write. You can sketch, you can do whatever feels good. Poetry always welcome. Just focusing on what's coming in, what's new, what's beginning, what's on its way. Writing about any particular one of those things or going through all of them. About another minute and a half to just let it flow. What is sparked for you as you think about these things that are on their way, the things that are transitioning in now? And now, finishing up whatever word or phrase, image you're on, go ahead and set your journal aside. And let's drop back in, returning to the home of our own breath, getting comfortable, settling back in, lowering the gaze or closing the eyes as you find your breath again. And just on that backdrop of the breath, noticing now what else is there, what emotions have left a residual effect. Can you identify any sensations in the body that weren't there a few minutes ago, or that feel a little different than they felt a few minutes ago? Is there an observable effect of thinking about these things that are coming into being for you? Where do you feel it in the body? And now gently sliding the attention back to the breath, noticing, is there a residual effect on the breath itself? If you've come out of evenness first, before shifting anything, just notice which side is shifting and how so. Maybe both sides are a little different. Maybe the in-breath feels a little heavier. Maybe the exhale feels a little shorter. Anything at all, just noticing. And after you've had a chance to play detective for a little bit, whenever you're ready, intentionally bringing evenness back to the breath again. Starting always just by counting what's already there. Noticing, how many beats does it take to breathe in? How many beats does it take to breathe out? And from that place of knowing what's already here, gently ushering in evenness by adding a half count or so to either side of the breath. With great gentleness, bringing them into evenness again. Maybe deepening the breath by adding a count to each side after you've found that even place. And now, continuing to breathe in this even way, can you notice and identify the moment when the exhale begins? Can you find it where you're no longer either inhaling or in that stillness in between, but actually exhaling? When does it start? And what is that journey through the exhale? Does it feel even? Maybe staccato? A little gravelly? Does it have a texture at all? A weight? Just focusing on the quality of that exhale, keeping the breath even, taking just as long to inhale as you exhale, so that you don't become deprived of oxygen. And then noticing if you can find the exact moment when you're no longer exhaling, Where does it end? And just watching a couple more of those exhales. And then letting that image go. Letting the breath just be balanced. And letting the magnifying glass come down. Just letting it do its thing. And bringing a little bit of movement into the body. And when you're ready, with the gaze down, fluttering the eyes open, and again, finding your journal. As we get ready for the third prompt. And of course, now let's take a look at what's on its way out. Take a look at that list or that side of your Venn diagram of all the things that you are leaving behind that are transitioning out of your life. And then just free write about that. What comes out for you when you think about saying goodbye to these things? Some of them may spark a sense of gratitude on their way out. Others might be more of a bittersweet ending. Just noticing and writing all that comes to mind. And if there are bits that feel exciting to see go and bits that feel a little bittersweet, can you hold space for both of those things? And what does that feel like to have both of those things? And what are perhaps some residual things, after effects, just like those emotions in the body, that you expect to linger even after these things have transitioned out? Do you want there to be none at all? And just noticing that. And getting ready to finish up whatever words or phrases you're on. And setting aside your journal when you're ready, as we circle back in to breathe again. Starting by bringing the attention to the breath and noticing. Noticing any after effects, any emotions, any places where your thoughts meet the body. Any holding sensations in the body that are different from the breath, that are made evident on the backdrop of the breath. Noticing if it's different than a few minutes ago when you looked. And when you're ready, allowing the attention to fully focus on the inhales and exhales again. Starting first by noticing, was there an impact on that rhythm? Have the inhales and exhales fallen out of step again? Slowly, gently, just noting, how long does it take to breathe in? How long does it take to breathe out? And with great gentleness, bringing evenness into the breath if they're uneven, or perhaps adding a little depth by adding another count. And now we'll bring the attention to that space in between the inhales and the exhales. You've already practiced finding the end of the inhale where it completely stops. And you've noticed the start of the exhale, that moment when it begins. Can you find that place in between the two of these? That place when you are neither inhaling nor exhaling. It might be a flash of a millisecond. It might be beats and counts. Noticing that space in between the two. And as you notice, identify, and notice that place in between the inhale and the exhale, notice if there's a quality to be had here too. What does that pause feel like? Maybe it doesn't feel like a pause at all. What is that sensation between inhaling and exhaling? Does focusing in on it create a ripple in the body or in the mind, on your emotions? Maybe not, but just noticing. Keeping the inhales and the exhales even, although perhaps beginning to experiment with elongating that space in between the two, if you haven't already done so. Now, trace your attention along the exhale and find the place between the exhale and the inhale. You might find that it feels nothing like the place between the inhale and the exhale, that this feels very different. It might feel exactly the same. is the characteristic of this place between the exhale and the inhale. What does it feel like? Does it create any echoes in the mind or the body as you focus in on it? Does it become longer with your attention? Does it resist elongation? As you continue to keep the inhale and the exhale even, but focus on the space in between the exhale and the inhale, what happens? What shifts by virtue of your attention? And just watching that space a couple more times, that space between the tail end of the exhale and the beginning of an inhale. And when you're ready, let the attention release from that place. Back to the inhale, back to the exhale. Release any counting and just let the breath breathe itself. And beginning to come back into the space, maybe making some movements before fluttering the eyes open. And one last time, finding your journal as we prepare for the final prompt. And that is, what is it like in this liminal space? What does it feel like to be between the things that are leaving and the things that are coming? What does it feel like to have them both here at the same time? Go ahead and let everything that comes up for you pour onto the paper in whatever form it wants to. Noticing any sort of conflicting areas or seemingly conflicting emotions, some things that feel joyful about this in-between place and some things that feel challenging. Letting that be true and just writing everything that comes to mind. Taking another minute or so. finishing up whatever words, phrases that you are on. Setting aside your journal now, maybe bringing it to a close. And let's find our breath together one last time. Coming back to this home that is your body and your breath. And before doing anything to shift your breath, noticing what's here now. After writing about that transitional period, after resting in this period of transition, residing in it, occupying it, are there any residual effects in the body, places where the thoughts meet the body as emotions or physical sensations? Anything that perhaps was not there or is different than it was a few minutes ago? Anything that stands out on the backdrop of your breath? You take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, releasing any tension in any of those places. Take another deep breath in, identifying anything that maybe needs to be released. And as you exhale, as though you were massaging it with your breath, letting it go. Holding space for the emotions that are here, gently having compassion for them, and giving yourself the freedom from overwhelm by returning to the base of your breath, this home base that is with you always. And gently bringing the attention back to the inhales and exhales and the spaces in between. Just noticing right now the rhythm they've chosen, how the breath is showing up at this moment. If the breath is symmetrical or asymmetrical. If the space between the inhales and the exhales matches or doesn't match the space between the exhales and the inhales. Just taking a few journeys of the breath, noticing these 4 components. And before we leave this place of noting the inhales, exhales, spaces in between the two, let's try a breathing technique together. 4-part breath. Let's take a even beats of an inhale, even beats of the exhale, but let's add on even beats of the spaces in between. We'll take this together. At the bottom of your next exhale, we'll move in counts of 4. And we'll begin. Inhaling, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Again. In, 3, 4. Hold, 3, 4. Exhale, 3, 4. Hold, 3, 4. Again, inhale, counting on your own, and holding same. Exhaling, hold, Exhaling, continuing, and holding. Twice more on your own now. Noticing what arises as you do this. Drawing your attention to each place with evenness. Honoring that which is coming in, that which is leaving, and the spaces in between. At the bottom of your next exhale, counting that hold and then letting it go. And just allowing the breath to breathe itself now. No more counting. Nothing else to do. Just breathing. Shifting from the human doing to the human being. Feeling the effects of your practice. Here, noticing where your breath feels most obvious right now. Where in the body it feels most obvious. And also where in the breath feels most obvious. If it's the inhale, as the chest rises or belly expands, or the sensation of a pause at the top of that breath, or the release of the exhale, feeling it let the shoulders ease or the belly soften, just noticing which part of the breath is most obvious to you right now. Whether it's the spaciousness between the exhale and the next inhale. Nothing to do, nothing to change, just noticing. And as the mind wanders to new thoughts or thoughts that feel like memories, maybe as the mind returns to that which you've written, the moment that you realize that you're off in thought, breathing a sigh of relief that you noticed, and come back. Come right back to the breath, picking up where you left off, or noticing something that stands out now about the breath. Where in the body, and where in the breath cycle itself. gently bringing the attention back to the breath every single time you notice. Knowing that that is the practice. That the mind is meant to wander off. That's what it does. Just smiling when you realize it and gently bringing it back to the breath. Take a deep breath in and release with a sigh. Twice more. Inhale. Exhale, find more release. Last time. Full deep breath in. Exhale, melt it all out. Bringing a little bit of movement into the body, maybe rubbing the hands on the thighs or rubbing the palms together. And when you are ready, fluttering the eyes open with the gaze down, just taking in the space around you, noting the floor, your legs, and slowly allowing the top of the spine to uncurl as you lift your head and take in the rest of your space. All that's in your peripheral vision, and maybe eventually finding your way back to the screen. My name is Selena Brown, and I'm so grateful that you're sharing your practice with me. Thank you. Be well.